Hello, welcome to this week's edition of the Ride Along Radio Show, the show where we give you our perspective, and in this case, my perspective, as a law enforcement veteran, 25 years on the job. My name is George Holt. I was a policeman in the city of Los Angeles for a couple of different police agencies, worked a variety of assignments. I worked in patrol, I worked canine, I worked SWAT. I was a narcotics detective, I was a bicycle patrol officer, supervisor, admin, pogue, et cetera, et cetera. So when we talk about these topics on this show, I'm giving you the benefit of my perspective as someone with 25 years of law enforcement experience and a wide and varied type of experience, and also my perspective as someone who grew up in the city of Los Angeles and some of those particular experiences I have from that perspective. So you're kind of going to get both sides of the coin. This is show number 97. Today is Thursday, November 30th, 2017. And we started this show, I think, October 1st, 2015. So aside for some breaks here and there, we've been rolling along steadily. And we're almost at show 100. We took a break last week because it was Thanksgiving. But the week before that was the 16th of November. And I had a guest on with me, retired Captain LaPonda Fitzpatrick from the L.A. Airport Police, which is also the agency that I retired from. Did the last 10 years of my career there, first 15 years with the Housing Authority Police, working in the housing projects in L.A. And every week we do social media feedback. So there's no show last week, but the week before last, we talked about the Freddie Gray case and how one of the officers, Cesar Goodson, who was one of the last officers to be held accountable for what happened with Freddie Gray. And we've been covering the Freddie Gray case since it happened with Baltimore PD a couple of years ago. But Cesar Goodson had been cleared. And we said, hey, this is kind of we're getting toward the end here, and nobody's been held accountable for Freddie Gray's death. Well, on our Facebook page, Dave Blake, who actually has been a guest on the show before, a call-in guest on the show before, he's a retired police officer, and he's done some, I think he wrote a movie and may have directed the documentary too. And Dave Blake says, I'm interested, and maybe I'm missing something along the way. You both appear to insinuate that there is a mystery man responsible for Gray's death. Is there any evidence to support that claim? And I know a lot of people probably got that from what we were saying, and the reason you got that is because that's exactly what we were saying. Both Captain Fitzpatrick and I do believe that someone is responsible for Freddie Gray's death. Freddie Gray didn't commit suicide. Freddie Gray didn't die of natural causes. Freddie Gray didn't, according to the ME's report, the medical examiner's report, Freddie Gray did not, his death wasn't an accident. It was ruled a homicide. Legally, homicide means death at the hands of another. Now, sometimes homicide is justified, sometimes it's legal, sometimes it's illegal. Homicide merely means death at the hands of another. So quite naturally, yeah, I'm of the opinion that someone is responsible for killing Freddie Gray. Now, I don't think we'll ever find out who that person is, though, because they keep bringing officers up on charges. They had 6 officers that they indicted for depraved heart murder, put them on trial for it. All 6 of them walked. Then they had to go through the admin process, and 5 of the 6 officers walked. And now the most recent one, Sergeant Alicia White, who was the one who had the most community support, by the way, she's just been cleared. We're actually going to play that segment, and then we'll get back in and I'll talk about that a little bit more.
Tonight, the trial board hearing for Baltimore Police Sergeant Alicia White related to the 2015 arrest and death of Freddie Gray has been dismissed. In a statement tonight, Police Commissioner Kevin Davis said White will face no further administrative actions, pointing to the outcomes of the 2 previous disciplinary trials. Davis said proceeding with this one would not be in good faith. Sergeant White was supposed to have a disciplinary hearing next month. Both Lieutenant Brian Rice and Officer Cesar Goodson were cleared early this month. 2 other officers, Edward Nero and Garrett Miller, chose to receive disciplinary action rather than go through the administrative hearings. In a statement, the head of the Baltimore Police Union, Lieutenant Gene Ryan, said, "We applaud the decision of Commissioner Davis."
So now we've seen this this is the last shoe out of the 6 shoes. And you heard the reporter say that a couple of the officers just took whatever the admin punishment was rather than keep going through the process. Because even though they did not do anything that rose to the level of being able to be convicted in a court of law, when you start talking about department standards, department rules, guidelines, and regulations, that bar is a lot lower. And the burden of proof is a lot less on the department to say, well, maybe you didn't do anything criminal, but you broke this department policy. And, a good police department policy is written in a way that it is stricter than the law. Okay? And the reason for that is that an officer can break the policy without also breaking the law. So it gives that officer a little buffer in there where the officer can just be fired instead of going to the penitentiary. So good policies are written within the law, well within the law. You know, like in baseball, they have that little warning track before you hit that outfield wall. Good policies are written to be so tight in conforming with the law that there's actually a warning track outside the policy that officer can stop at before they do something criminal, usually. So this last officer, Sergeant Alicia White, is cleared. She's going to go back to work. Her name, face, reputation, all been dragged through the streets of Baltimore, and just like all the rest of those officers. And, that was because of a rush to judgment on the part of the, I forget what they call her. She's the equivalent of a district attorney, but they don't have, that's not her title. But Marilyn Mosby is the mayor or the chief prosecutor. And she's the one who pressed these charges on these officers because it was political. Guy dies in police custody. A black man dies in police custody. And the coroner comes back with a report that says that they died at the hands of another. Quite naturally, people are going to want some accountability. And everybody should want accountability for that, including everybody in law enforcement within Baltimore and outside of Baltimore should want there to be some form of accountability. I want there to be accountability, but I want you to get the right person. I don't want us to waste time. Hey, we got to get some scapegoats. Let's see how we can get these people faster so that we can, appease this public that's out here angry. And what happens is you get 6 people who aren't the right people. Okay? They get held up. They get dragged through the mud. Their faces all over the place. At the end of the day, it's done now. They've gone back to their lives. They've all been acquitted and cleared. And we still don't know who killed Freddie Gray. So yes, Dave Blake, I do believe that there is a mystery man or woman or mystery men or women who are responsible for Freddie Gray's death. I concur with the coroner's report. So there's that. Now speaking of Baltimore PD, this is an interesting case, and it's building momentum, and it's unfortunate that in American law enforcement there's this level of distrust between law enforcement and the community that people are asking these questions. But there was a Baltimore police detective who was killed in the line of duty a couple of weeks ago. And he's, I believe, the first Baltimore officer killed in quite some time. And it just so happens that detective was set to testify the next day in a police corruption case. And quite naturally, for you to be killed in the line of duty the day before you're supposed to go testify, it's raising all kind of eyebrows. People are talking about it shades of Serpico from the old NYPD scandal, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to play you a video on that, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts. If you want to call in, it's 323-293-3375 if you want to add your voice to the mix. But here's that video.
The search for a gunman who killed a Baltimore police officer is entering its 9th day. 18-year police veteran Sean Suter was gunned down in a vacant lot. He was shot the day before he was expected to testify in a high-profile corruption case involving other Baltimore police officers. Chris Van Cleve is in Washington. Chris, good morning.
Good morning. Police continue to believe Detective Suter was the victim of a random attack while investigating a murder in a neighborhood prone to violence. But after 9 days in a citywide manhunt, they are yet to name a suspect, and the lack of developments has heightened interest in Suter's grand jury testimony. Baltimore police have asked the FBI to enhance this audio from Detective Sean Suter's final radio call.
It's unintelligible right now. We don't know exactly what he said, but he was clearly in distress.
On Wednesday, police confirmed signs of a struggle were found on Suter's clothing, and the veteran officer was shot in the head at close range with his own weapon. Another revelation came when investigators confirmed Suter was shot the day before he was supposed to testify in a federal racketeering case involving 8 members of an elite Baltimore police unit called the Gun Trace Task Force. They are now facing charges of stealing money, property, and narcotics from civilians over a 2-year period.
Well, I understand the wild possibilities that go through people's minds when we all want answers. I just am determined to keep following the evidence. There's nothing that we won't consider.
The main witness to Suter's murder is his partner. He told police Suter approached a man acting suspicious. Investigators say video shows his partner took cover after hearing gunfire.
We do not know where these shots came from. We have officers in bad locations.
The shooting spawned a citywide manhunt that put a Baltimore neighborhood on lockdown. At the scene of the shooting, some residents are offering their prayers.
He deserved that prayer. The family deserved that prayer. Our city of Baltimore deserved the prayer.
The reward being offered for information about the detective's murder now stands at over $315,000. A funeral for the father of 5 is scheduled for next Wednesday. Vlad?
Okay, so quite naturally, people have questions, okay? And if you break this down, my questions have questions, okay? And I'm going to try to branch that off as much as I can and lead you through my chain of thought and then tell you how I get to these questions. There are things that speak to this being hella suspicious, and there are things that speak to it being, okay, well, I understand why that happened, okay? The most important thing is if it was a setup, if it was an ambush, that would make more sense if it just happened as they were driving down the street. That would make more sense if it had been a radio call that they were responding to, and then that happened, because it could mean that someone lured them to that location. But apparently, this is what we call officer-initiated activity, meaning the officers are driving down the street, hey, there's that dude, let's go talk to him, which means the decision was made in that car to go talk to that individual, okay? That means it's less likely that it was a setup, because how would you know where the officers were going to decide to get out? Now, my question about that would be, whose decision was it to make that stop? Whose decision was it to say, hey, let's jam that dude up? Hey, there's our guy. Who said that? Well, that's not the kind of thing that's documented. That's the kind of thing that the officers would have to testify about. And, of course, only his surviving partner would be able to shed light on that. And I'm sure that they're asking him that question. So let's see what comes of that. But that's very important in terms of it being officer-initiated activity or an officer's observation, and which one of the officers really initiated that activity. Because if it was the victim officer, then that says that, it's not likely that was a setup. And I'm not saying at all it was. I'm just kind of trying to play to the conspiracy theories and playing to the department line also, because I see both sides of it. So, officer-initiated activity, which one? The fact that the officer was murdered with his own gun also falls into line with what the department is saying. In terms of, if you were going to ambush a police officer, you'd bring a gun, right? You wouldn't try to overpower that officer, get that officer's gun from them, and then shoot that officer. You just wouldn't do it because, there's no guarantee that you'll win that confrontation. Officers get shot with their own guns. In fact, it's not uncommon. At one time, the FBI statistics on that were that out of every 7 police officers killed by gunfire, 3 of those 7 officers were killed with their own guns. So that's almost half, right? So it's not uncommon for an officer to be killed with their own gun, which is why when police departments select bulletproof vests for their officers, they make sure that vest can stop the guns that the officers are authorized to carry, because it's just a high probability that if you get killed with a gun, it's going to be your own. It's about almost a 50-50 shot, right? So him being killed with his own gun is not something that speaks to actually that this is exactly what they say it was. He was killed by the suspect in that murder, not being set up by fellow officers. So let's put that in that column. Now, we say that he was a witness and he was going to testify the next day in a police corruption trial. But I haven't seen anything that said that he was going to testify for those officers who are on trial, or he was going to testify against those officers who are on trial. And I'm sure that the Baltimore Police Department knows which one it was. Okay? Also, was he a witness who was going to be a really, really valuable witness to he's the one that's going to be able to seal the deal and put those dudes in the penitentiary? Or he's the one that's going to be able to give some exonerating evidence, some exculpatory evidence, and once he gets up there and tells his story, those guys are going to be able to be exonerated? Or was he simply going to come in and testify about procedure? Like, this is what we're supposed to do when we recover a gun. You do this, you do that, you do this, in this order. And then they could say, well, those guys weren't doing that, so clearly they were out of policy, and clearly they were doing something illegal. So he could be just coming to talk about that, in which case, hell, there's probably 70 other detectives who could come in and give that exact same testimony. So eliminating him would not necessarily be a relevant move or something that might change the outcome of the trial. So is he a star witness? Is he just going to testify testify about procedure? Was he testifying for them? Was he testifying against them? That's when I say my questions have questions. That's what I mean. Now, here is where we get on the other side of it. You know, because of the perception that this is something that's potentially crooked, we really have to be open about it. And really, the Baltimore Police Department should probably take a step back from this and say, you know what? We understand we're going to do our own investigation, but we're also going to let the FBI investigate, because the FBI is already assisting with the investigation, because you heard that audio tape, right, of that struggle. The FBI has stepped in to help clean up that audio so they can kind of hear what the officer was saying, because maybe he was saying a name or something, right? We don't know. So they're going to help clean it up. So the FBI is like, well, if you guys want, we'll investigate the murder, because, you know, that way it gets that onus off the Baltimore Police Department. Because, you know, if people think that Baltimore police had this detective killed because he was going to testify against Baltimore police, then who's the last agency who should be investigating the murder? Baltimore police, right? So the FBI has offered to step in, but the FBI can't just come take over that case, because homicide, murder, is a state crime. And the FBI doesn't have the jurisdiction to do that unless they're asked by the chief of police to come step in and do it. And the chief, probably not wanting to fuel speculation that, oh, it's so bad that the feds had to come in, is saying, no, we can handle it. Also, it's probably a point of pride of, no, we want to handle this on our own. When one of my coworkers was killed, Tommy Scott was killed April 29, 2005, my department didn't have homicide detectives. We had detectives. We didn't have homicide detectives. LAPD handled that. But we had a detective who worked hand in hand because he was one of our own. So we wanted to make sure that we were apprised of what was going on. So it's a pride thing. So that could be what it is, too. It's a pride thing. Baltimore PD is going to handle it. And also, we're not so crooked that we got to have the feds look over our shoulder. But again, you know, in law enforcement, that code of ethics, and I said to somebody, you know, there's a law enforcement code of ethics, and they seem to be surprised at that. But there is, and one of the passages in the law enforcement code of ethics says that we are to avoid impropriety or the appearance of impropriety. And if it starts looking to the public in Baltimore like there's something improper going on, then the onus is on that chief to then allow the federal government, the FBI, to step in and let them investigate. And really, it should be something that he voluntarily does and just says, hey, you guys take a look at it and reassure everybody that we're on the up and up. Because you should never want to have that hanging over your head. Because what if they never catch the guy who did it, you know? Or what if they catch the guy and he says, I didn't do that, one of the crooked cops did it. You want to have a straight up great investigation handled by a neutral party that has all the firepower in the world to handle homicide investigations, the best crime lab in the world, etc. Let them step in and do it. So they should be doing that. And, you know, I think as time goes on, and the detective was actually buried yesterday, as time goes on, hopefully we will get to the bottom of this and find out what happened to the detective. I would hate to think that an officer would murder another officer, but again, it's pretty clear that NYPD tried to kill Frank Serpico back in the late 60s, early 70s when he was testifying before I think it was the Knapp Commission about police corruption. So it's not like there's not a precedent. And, you know, we've had cops kill other cops before, unfortunately. It happened in New Orleans. Antoinette Frank killed her partner to stop him from talking about a robbery she had committed. So it happens. We just have to hope that didn't happen this time. Okay, I got time for one more video before my break. This is another mysterious death. We had a Border Patrol agent in the El Paso, Texas region patrolling with his partner, and that agent was murdered, and the partner was wounded. And the initial story was that they were attacked by a group of illegal aliens with rocks. Well, that's a story that was put out initially, and then that story got walked back a little bit. The police union is still staying with that story, but there's some things that it maybe not supported in the evidence, at least not preliminarily. And so now they're looking at that, wondering what happened, because the officers were found in a ravine, and one of them had his head bashed in with rocks. It's not the first time. You may think, why the hell would somebody jump guys with pistols with rocks in their hand? But it wouldn't be the first time that Border Patrol agents have been attacked with rocks. So we're going to play that video and come back and kind of talk about that a little bit, and then we're going to head into our first break.
The FBI is offering a reward of up to $25,000 for information leading to an arrest following the death of a Border Patrol agent. Rogelio Martinez died in Texas Sunday. David Begnaud outside the hospital in El Paso where Martinez died, and a second agent is being treated. David, good morning.
Good morning. That second agent is in critical but stable condition here at University Medical Center in El Paso. You know, the National Border Patrol Council, the union for Border Patrol agents, has said these two agents were attacked, and they were attacked with rocks. But no other agency has said that, including the FBI, which is investigating.
There are a number of possible scenarios.
The FBI special agent in charge of this investigation, Emerson Bowie, says finding out exactly what happened to Rogelio Martinez and his partner is now the most important investigation for the FBI's El Paso division. The 36-year-old Border Patrol agent's death is being treated as a potential assault on a federal officer.
Why call it a potential assault and not an assault?
We call it potential because we do not have the full picture yet as to what transpired. But once we get closer to that, then we'll be able to present those facts.
The agents were found around 11:20 Saturday night in a culvert next to Interstate 10, right outside the town of Van Horn. Both men had broken bones and severe head trauma. A law enforcement source tells CBS News Agent Martinez radioed in earlier that night that he was getting out of his vehicle and following a trail of possible footprints in the dirt. The Border Patrol Agents Union says the two men were ambushed and attacked with rocks. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, Senator Ted Cruz, and President Donald Trump have all described what happened as an attack.
Until we have the facts, we shouldn't jump to those conclusions. But
Congressman Beto O'Rourke of El Paso spoke with the Border Patrol's acting sector chief on Monday.
They are following all leads, but at this point, they don't know in all certainty what has happened.
So where did the information come from where the Border Patrol got the information saying that the agents had been attacked and they had been attacked with stones? We reached out to the council again last night, and they said they got the information from agents who were at the scene the night it happened. We asked the spokesman, do you still stand by the report that the agents were ambushed and stones were used? We were told, quote, we stand by it 100%. Bianna?
David, our thanks to you.
Okay. So, you know, we talk about why they may not want to roll that back. You know, once you come out, whether you're the President of the United States who spoke on this, or you're the Border Patrol Agents Union who also spoke on this, and you say, hey, these Border Patrol agents were attacked, and that's why we need to build that wall. Or, that just if you're the president, right? If you are a Border Patrol Agent Union representative, and you're saying, hey, these Border Patrol agents were attacked, and that's why we need more Border Patrol agents. That's why we need more safety equipment. That's why we need better weapons. Something that's going to further your position, either politically or just your agenda with your agency and progressing and making progress towards safety equipment or whatever for your agency. You know, those people went out there and they stood on that. And they made statements based on that. And they're saying, see, this proves the point I've been making all along. So quite naturally, if some evidence comes out that is to the contrary, they're going to be slow to want to walk that back because they gained from that agenda. And I'm not saying, or from that narrative. And I'm not saying at all that it's a false narrative. I'm saying you could see why they would be slow to let go of that once they've latched onto it for gain. And especially the president who, you know, has made a big deal about this wall, who's going to pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. So when this comes out, it's right up his alley. It plays to the message he's been saying, and it will help put pressure on Congress. But if it turns out that that's not true, well, then that kind of undermines that. And you went out there and stood on that, and it's not something that you really maybe should have stood on. So we are going to be following this one big time because there's going to be some developments there, and I think it's going to be pretty interesting, even how they're starting to walk it back. Another situation we talked about a couple of weeks ago was in Florida, where that officer slapped the female football fan. You guys may remember that at the Miami Hurricanes game. They were, she slapped him and he punched her. That's what happened. They were taking the female out of there, didn't handcuff her, if you recall. She slaps at him. First time, just kind of brushes him. He ignores it. The second time, she lands a nice one on him. Pop! And he just responds and just hits her with a closed fist. And that was the end of it. No more resistance from her. Took all the fight out of her. Well, there was a big uproar about that, which we covered. And now it's come out that that officer has been cleared of all wrongdoing, which I knew was going to happen. So there's the follow-up on that. So we're going to take a break. And when we come back from the break, we're going to get into our next segment here. Going to have my guest in studio. And we'll move on. So I'll see you guys in a couple of minutes. And that was Short Skirt and Long Jacket by Cake. I recently discovered them. I knew who they were, but I didn't really get into them till recently. So you're going to be hearing Cake music on the Right Along Radio Show for the next month till I get past my cake phase. So anyway, so you will notice that I am no longer riding an Elkhorn. I'm not by myself anymore because my guest has arrived. My guest for the evening, who is a political and social issues commentator and a recurring Right Along Radio guest, the one and only Jasmyne Cannick.
How are you?
Okay, I'm good. Thank you. I'm so glad that you were able to make it. You got a lot of stuff going on.
I do have a lot of stuff going on, contrary to popular belief.
Well, I don't know why anybody who's paying attention doesn't think that you're busy, because it's clear that you are rather busy. And on top of all kind of developing stories. And it seems like they just keep coming.
This is L.A.
It
This
is.
is America.
Well, that's the other thing. And you mostly cover local stories. And you're still, like,
but
very
turn
busy.
them national.
Wow. Yeah, that's right, huh? Yeah. So when last time you were on here, we talked about the Ed Buck, Jamel Moore situation. And
we still have our standing bet.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
My dollar
no, I was
ready.
going to say you have my dollar ready because I think the bet was that he would be arrested. We didn't say convicted.
No, charged.
We said charged?
Yes.
Okay.
That, if he gets charged with something, that you would pay me $1.
Okay. And so a lot of you guys say $1. It's, this ain't Vegas. So we're just, we're keeping it interesting by just,
It's the principle.
It's the principle of it. Actually, exactly right. It's the principle of it. Well, I'm going to be able to pay you $1 because my erstwhile co-host, Gil Contreras, bet me $100 that nobody was going to be in legal trouble behind the Russia collusion investigation.
Great. So you have $99.
I'll have $99. Or actually, I prefer to think of it, they'll have $101 because I'm going to get $100 from him and one from you.
No.
So.
Ed Buck is going down.
Well, you know what? Let's see. And, Ed Buck was the Democratic donor to the tune of a lot of money. He's given a lot of people.
Hundreds
of thousands of dollars.
You read the autopsy report, didn't you? Or at least the LA Times?
Yes.
Version of it?
Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
So, just give everybody kind of like a quick background for people who are watching for the first time and weren't paying attention the first time or something.
So they're going to be like, I thought she was here to talk about...
Well, we are going to get into that. We are going to just give them like a quick, 15 seconds so they know what we're talking about.
This is not a 15-second story, but July 27th of this year, Jamel Moore, a young black gay man, was found dead in Ed Buck's home in West Hollywood. And the significance of this particular death was, yes, it was an overdose on crystal meth.
Right.
And at the time, the coroner and the sheriffs just kind of chalked it off as just being that.
Another accidental overdose in West Hollywood. Right. Happens all the time, unfortunately.
It does, unfortunately. But there's more to the story. And every single week, more of that story is being folded back.
It is.
And, thankfully, Jamel left a journal behind.
Which is amazing, I thought. And I think that's the key to this whole thing, right?
I think it's the key, too. And a lot of what he said in that journal showed up in that autopsy report, just in terms of him being injected, his family and friends already knowing his fear of needles. That was well known.
That wouldn't be something he'd get into himself.
He would not do that himself. Exactly. So currently, there's a campaign to get the Democrats to return Ed Buck's dirty money.
Right.
If they can do it for white women and for white men and
everybody else is victimized.
Talk bad about Harvey Weinstein and everyone else.
And remove people from their jobs.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Then they can do the same with one of their own donors, even if he's one of those donors that maxes out.
Right.
It's, again, the principle of the thing, right?
Sure.
So as a Democrat, I still have one foot in this party. I want them to walk that walk and talk that talk.
Sure.
So there's a campaign around that.
Have people started to give back money at all?
The only person who's given back money so far is Congresswoman Karen Bass. She was actually the first one to give back her entire donation. We've had one West Hollywood council member donate $25.
Donate $25?
Yeah.
To what?
I think he was donating it towards the funeral, but this is also a council member who has gotten thousands and thousands of dollars.
Right, $25.
Right. And then...
What, he reaching his ashtray?
Right. So then we had the Stonewall Democratic Club that...
Right, now that's a big deal.
They gave they've gotten over $13,000, okay? And I think they gave $500 back.
Wow.
So it's a push. I just came back from San Francisco. I spoke at the California Democratic Party.
I saw that. Nice.
At the African American Caucus. They're going to carry a resolution. Oftentimes, black folks got to be the conscience of the Democratic Party. And so they're going to make that push. And so we'll see how that goes. And then on the legal track, there's an attorney who's working it just in terms of pushing Lacey's office, District Attorney Lacey's office, as well as the sheriff's
that's
department.
for criminal. Now, what about on the civil side? And again, sorry, more than 15 seconds, but it's important.
No, I believe that's all gonna come.
Is that a condo or an apartment he was in?
It's an apartment, rent-controlled apartment.
Okay, and I'm asking in terms of homeowners association, homeowners insurance. death happening on the premises, blah, blah, blah,
you know,
blah,
if
blah,
they're
blah.
looking into all of that, I think the strategy right now with the attorney and the family is to focus on the criminal charges.
Sure.
And then,
quite naturally. Well, you win you win the criminal, you're going to win the civil.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I gotta say, you know, for a small group of folks, a lot has been accomplished.
Oh yeah, sure, a lot of attention, definitely.
So that's the situation with that, and people who want to know more about that case can go to Justice, the number 4, and then Jamel.com. It's GEMMEL, Justice for Jamel.
And, you know, I wanted to bring that up because, it's, you know, so many times in the news cycle, stuff comes up, people talk about it, and then it's gone. Yeah. And you don't hear about it anymore. But this is something that's still developing, and it still needs to be dealt with. So I wanted to make sure we brought that up, talk about it.
That's one of the things that I have sort of prided myself on in all the years I've been sort of doing this thing, whatever this thing is, that I kind of focus on those stories that don't get that attention.
Right. And like you said, and make them go national.
Right. Because, you know, I'm not really into regurgitating stuff that other folks are doing and doing well out there in the media. I may have an opinion about it if I don't think they did it well, but I'm not really into that. Like, I'm into, like, those obscure stories, those stories that people wouldn't hear about unless they or if they have heard about it, like the story we're going to talk about from a different angle and a different point of view.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And on that note, we're going to segue into that story that we're going to talk about. That was nice. She set it up for alley-oop. That was nice. She set it up. That was a nice setup. So the story we're going to talk about is I only know the suspect's name. I don't know the victim's name. So
and I keep mentioning the victim's name.
I know you do.
That's part of the problem.
I know you do. And so we're going to talk about the Cameron Terrell case. Okay?
We're going to talk about the murder of Justin Holmes in South LA.
There you go. And the person accused is Cameron Terrell. This case is interesting because unfortunately we have multiple murders in South LA any given year.
Any given day.
Carried out by gang members. But this one is unique in that the perpetrator, the main perpetrator, one of the main perpetrators, is not even from the community. You know, and this is not to make a comedy or light of or anything, but the first thing I thought about when I saw the case, I thought about that movie Malibu's Most Wanted with Jasmyne Cannick, where the kid comes down from the hood. That too. I thought, but you know, a kid from Malibu's Most Wanted, he comes down from Malibu and he's hanging out and he's real yo. He's real hood like, and this kid is basically the same thing, just coming from Palos Verdes Estates, which is multi-million-dollar homes.
Yeah,
and he comes down and we got a video, so we'll play the video and then we'll get back into it.
There is some mystery surrounding this case. One of the suspects, or actually two of the suspects, are juveniles, and we don't know their identity as of this point. But the third suspect is a local 18-year-old young man from Palos Verdes, who the LAPD says was involved in what they're describing as a gang murder in South LA. The murder happened the afternoon of October 1st in South LA. One of the suspects, 18-year-old Cameron Terrell, seen here on his Facebook page, now facing 1 count of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. He's now free on $5 million bail. The victim in this case, Justin Holmes, had just rounded this corner at 78th and Western with 2 of his friends when detectives say they were confronted by a pair of suspects, both of them juveniles, who asked the men where they were from and then opened fire. Justin Holmes was shot and killed on this sidewalk. The 2 suspects, according to detectives, got into a car driven by Cameron Terrell and took off. Terrell isn't from South L.A. He's from this affluent section of Palos Verdes, where Eyewitness News reporter Carlos Granda recently visited the family's home to see if anyone would comment.
Hi, I'm here from Channel 7. I was trying to see if anyone is available to comment about Cameron.
No, we're not. It's Channel 7 News. No, we're not.
Cameron was a really sweet kid. He definitely knew how to make you feel welcome.
We also went to Palos Verdes High School, where several students told us they've known Cameron Terrell for years.
I only knew him, middle school, elementary school. Those times I didn't really get a chance to connect with him in high school, so hearing about this was just very, very, very interesting and unexpected.
School administrators also came out but declined to comment.
I don't know any information. All right, thank you.
Photos on Terrell's Facebook page don't appear to show a young man in trouble, But according to the criminal complaint, there are allegations this murder is connected with gang activity. Now, we reached out to Cameron Terrell's attorney tonight, who offered no comment at this time. As for the 2 juvenile suspects who were arrested along with Terrell, they are currently being transferred to adult court. So hopefully in the near future, we will find out their identities and more information on how they were involved.
Okay, we're sitting here watching this and commenting how his Facebook doesn't appear to show a young man in trouble, but definitely had a gun in one of the pictures. And it appeared to be
smoking weed. And again, that's what you get sometimes with television reporting. I mean, Rush Limbaugh always calls them the drive-by media, and I have to chuckle sometimes because there is some truth in that.
But you can look at the photos.
You can clearly look at the photos and see a young person in trouble. Right. If on your Facebook page you are displaying, guns and yourself, smoking weed, clearly. So,
wow.
But anyway, so yeah, there have been a lot of news reports on this story, some of them accurate, some of them inaccurate. I've actually gotten to speak to a lot of the people involved. And I went to the arraignment yesterday. Was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. It was either yesterday or Tuesday. I went to his arraignment, Cameron Terrell's arraignment. But yeah,
how was he dressed?
How would you expect him to be dressed when your parents bailed you out of jail to the tune of $5.4 million? So, whereas when I usually walk into CCB, criminal court building, and I see folks in flip-flops, house shoes, rollers, pants hanging down off of their butts, this young man actually did have a suit on.
Yeah, isn't that something? But he had a suit when he's out there banging in these streets, though. I got a chance to sit on the Menendez brothers trial. That's how old I am. Look up the Menendez brothers.
We don't have to look it up. They just did a Law and Order on it.
Somebody did, didn't they? Yeah,
somebody was talking about that. And it was amazing. Well, I loved it.
I got a chance to sit in on it. Me and my old partner, Mike Duffy, we had a caper with LAPD with Mark Morales and a couple other guys, and we arrested a guy for PCP. We go to court for that. Then we're done with that. And the next courtroom over is the Menendez brothers. And this is the big trial. So, man, we go where we want in the courthouse. So we're going to go in and sit down on this famous trial. Have a good story to tell later. And we're sitting there just taking it all in and looking at those 2 boys. They had been in jail already for a while. They looked as pale as marble statues. And they looked shook. And they looked guilty as hell to me. Okay? So from his countenance, and of course they had suits on. They didn't have the county jail jumpsuits on. I think they had on shirts and ties.
They also had private counsel.
They had shirts and ties. They had private counsel. Right. Which nowadays comes with an image consultant, right? If you got the right attorneys. So what was his, was he sitting up proper like he's from Palos Verdes Estate? Or was he kind of slouch, hood-like?
He did not come into the courtroom until his case was called.
Of course.
And, of course, he left right afterwards.
Of course.
And he kept his head down, hands in front of him. Kind of looked,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that look.
Well, this is the I'm Justin Timberlake doing bad boy stuff with Janet Jackson till it's trouble, and now I'm back to the Mickey Mouse Club, Justin Timberlake.
Right, and so for me, when I got involved in this, and it was a weird kind of way because one of the family members reached out to me
of the victim.
No, one of the family members of one of the juveniles.
Well, and let's talk about that. That's important, too, because he's the only adult in this situation. And he was the driver. Right. So even if he wasn't the shooter, he was the driver and the only adult, which means, you're all part of it. So
right. So they had seen me on Roland Martin's show talking about this case, and then they reached out to me, and I actually went over to Jesse Owens Park and met with a few folks who were very, very familiar with Cameron Terrell.
The street name was Milk. Was that his street name?
I have no idea. It could have been. It could have been Vanilla Ice. I do not know. But I know that they told me that he rolled around a lot in his Mercedes Benz over there, and it was a mainstay over there up at the park, and in the adjacent neighborhoods. And where Jesse Owens is.
Yeah, I know exactly where it is. My kids took swimming lessons there. I'd like to know how he even fell into that. And became part of that lifestyle, that culture.
You must not have watched my interview.
No, I didn't.
Oh, you really should watch the interview because they talk about that.
They talk about how he fell into it?
They talk about how they think their reasoning for why he was accepted over there. Just in terms of with that younger crowd, because they're, for those people who have some sort of history of South LA and gangs, especially some folks, let's say maybe over 35.
Right.
One of the first questions they'd probably ask themselves is, why would they let a white boy on the set? Right. And so
I've seen it happen before, though.
That, that was a question that I asked.
Right.
But,
Well, times have changed, right?
Well, yeah.
But see, here's the thing. If he's from the hood, that's different. I've seen white boy Crips before, but they were from the hood.
Right. So he's obviously not from the hood. And I think that as much as from what I've been told and what I've seen through pictures and videos and other things, he wanted to be black and he wanted to be a part of this.
So he tried extra hard,
folks, and he
probably came down messing with a bunch of money or whatever.
But when it got too hot in the kitchen, he went back to what he knows, right?
But if he's driving in murders,
right? So I want to back up a little bit.
Okay,
all right. So first and foremost, a young man lost his life.
Yes,
right. And I think that in all of the reporting about this, that's been overshadowed.
Right. No, but he wasn't a gang member, was he? The victim?
Not that I know of. Okay. And I haven't read or seen any reports that say that he was.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how that defense team plays that up.
But I don't think that it really matters, because if you're walking down the street minding your own business.
Sure, but they always try to dirty the victim up. You know that.
I do know that.
So if there's any dirt out there to be put on him, they're going to do that.
But yeah, so Justin Holmes lost his life. He was laid to rest in Inglewood Park Cemetery, not too far from where we are right now.
Right.
And it's really interesting that a lot of people know Cameron Terrell's name, but they don't know Justin Holmes' name.
Right. Well,
and I got to tell you, when I went to court, his family and friends took up 2 rows in Department 30 that day. They showed up.
Good.
Okay. And it was really evident that he was well loved and well liked by his friends and his family, because again, he's gone, right? They didn't have to go to court,
right?
And from what I understand, there were the juveniles were also in court in East LA that day as well. Cameron Terrell was at CCB because he is 18.
He's an adult.
And the 2 minors are 16 and 17.
But they're going to try them as adults now, right?
Well, you know how it goes. You know that typically the DA's office on a case like this will move to try them as adults.
Gang enhancement, et cetera, sure.
Right. So right now they're all charged with murder and attempted murder.
There's another
enhancement.
Victim? Was there another victim that didn't die?
There were 2 other people who didn't die.
Okay.
They are, and then there's the enhancement. There hasn't been any special circumstances added at this time, which is part of the reason why Cameron Terrell is still walking free. Because if they do decide to add, if the special circumstances panel or committee, whatever the DA's office calls it, does decide to add that on there, his bail is probably going to be immediately revoked.
Yeah, then he'll be snatched up.
But because the 2 juveniles are juveniles, as you know, they're not eligible for bail.
Right.
And so it's interesting, and I've been having this conversation on Facebook with folks because people are conflicted, right? So, there's the one group that's like, well, hey, Justin Holmes lost his life. Why do we care anything about what's going on with the 3 suspects? But on the side with the 3 suspects, there is a disparity going on there.
Well, but you just said it, though. So with the fact that the juveniles are not eligible for bail anyway,
true.
Where's the disparity?
So, look, you've been in this game a long time and you've seen and heard a lot of stories.
Right.
Typically, when there's a gang murder, everybody in the car goes
and you got no bail.
And thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
So you think if everybody was 18, they still would? Well, they couldn't have done that. If everybody was 18, they still would have had to. They had to give everybody bail or give nobody bail.
Because when I was the piece I did for the Sentinel and the stuff that I've been doing on the news around it, I've been trying to do it without my own personal opinion, just like kind of what's going on and how people feel about it. Sure. But the reality of the situation is, and I said this to one of the parents that I spoke to, one of the juveniles, is like, so if the judge, let's say they move it out of juvenile court and they put it in adult court, and they say, well, your son's bail is going to be $5.4 million.
You might as well
He's still not going to get out.
Just say no bail. Yeah.
Right. So I think what a lot of people would have preferred to have seen is no bail all the way around.
Right.
And I'm going to present another reason why I personally agree with that. When Cameron Terrell was released, he returned back to school.
That's the amazing part, and we're going to actually. That's the next video. I'm glad you brought that because we want to play that.
I just help you with your segues.
You're amazing
right?
with that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right in there. That's beautiful. So it's video 2 on that. Yeah, they're in order. So it's video 2 on the on that one, on him going back to school.
That's creating a lot of outrage. An affluent high school student was allowed back in class even though he's charged with murder.
Parents showed up this morning to find out why he's not being suspended. CBS 2's Jasmyne Veal is live at Palos Verdes High School. So, Jasmine, did he show up today?
No, I just talked to parents who just spoke with the principal inside the high school here and told me that 18-year-old Cameron Terrell is not even here at school today or possibly the rest of the week because now district officials are trying to work out some sort of solution with his parents on an education moving forward. And it's still not the permanent suspension these parents want after Terrell's family posted $5 million bail for him to be out on murder charges.
We are here to say this child man, he's 18, does not belong in school with our children, with our 14-year-olds, with our 15-year-olds. He presents a danger to them.
Sandra Valeri was one of the upset parents who gathered outside Palos Verdes High School this morning. On campus, extra police officers patrolled the grounds. It's where 18-year-old Cameron Terrell has been attending class for the last few weeks after posting bail. He and 2 other teens were charged with murdering 21-year-old Justin Holmes in a gang shooting last month in South L.A.
I don't think anyone really expected him to do what he did.
Terrell comes from an affluent Palos Verdes family and appeared in this rap video a few months back. Rod Ueda's daughter is a freshman at Palos Verdes High.
This is a firestorm coming. I mean, the laws support that you cannot allow this to happen.
As a former police chief, Ueda says he worries about gang retaliation here at the school. He says the education code allows the district to suspend the student. Melvin Farmer drove all the way from L.A. He's with the River of Life Ministry. He says he knew the victim, who was not in a gang.
Not fair that 2 juveniles were driven by an adult and they're sitting in jail rotting while we got somebody out that's privileged.
I have seen him back.
You have?
I'm surprised that they would let him back.
And while some in this affluent beachfront community are asking parents not to rush to any judgment, the frustration only seems to be growing at the lack of action by the district. LAPD says that Terrell is the alleged getaway driver in all of this. The other 2 juveniles are expected to be tried as adults, and they'll be arraigned, Jeff and Sharon, later this month. Wow.
Now, okay. So, yeah, he's back in school. Like, everything is cool. Until somebody said something, of course. Now he's sitting at home. But, I mean, that is, that's the epitome of being privileged. You know?
And it's part of his strategy, too. It's part of a defense strategy.
Oh, to show that he's integrated back in. He's not a threat.
Well, no, not that he's integrated back in, that he's this good white kid that goes to school. Sure, right? Sure. So I think one of the parents said that he's a threat. What about gang retaliation? Right. Well, what do you think Black and brown parents feel every day where their kids go to school out in the inner city?
But they don't bring that up here.
You know,
that's her point. Don't bring that up here.
And it wasn't just that he returned to school. He's on the internet, photos of him at World Series games.
Wow,
he's expensive World Series.
Yeah, of
games.
Course. And hold on a second. If you're a parent and your child had even been suspended from school for fighting, you might think that you're going to be grounded, and unfortunately, you got to miss a World Series. But you go out and kill somebody. And you still get to go to the World Series? So I'm beginning to wonder about the parenting here.
And drive to people that possibly killed someone.
Okay, whatever. Yeah.
And you're exactly right. I mean, it definitely sends the wrong message. It sends this message of, he's like I said, he's this super privileged white boy.
Yeah, the other kids are sitting over at what did we call that? Not Wayside. It's Wayside for kids. East Lake. Yeah. He's sitting at East Lake, and you're at the World Series. You're all in East LA, though. He's in Chavez Ravine.
I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a defense. And I hadn't mentioned yet, one of the things that did happen in court this week is that he ditched his white lawyer for a black lawyer.
Right. To get rid of that racial component.
Again,
there's certainly a racial component there.
Absolutely.
Unless and they're not going to let him testify. But if I imagine if you were to get that kid on the phone, and Cameron, if you want to call in, it's 323-293-3375.
You're free. You can.
Yeah, you're free. You can call. You ain't even got to call collect. You can just call. Right. So if Cameron were to call right now, Cameron would probably sound black as my shoes, because he's in that system. Or not the system.
Oh, he did when he was in the culture. Court. When he said yes, sir, or something.
Well, that's what I was asking you. That's why I was trying to see where he's going with that.
I could definitely see he's still trying to keep that.
He's keeping it real.
Trying to no.
He's keeping it real.
No,
he's keeping it consistent with his image.
He's keeping it his idea of what he thinks it means to be real.
Right.
But I'm sure there's going to be a defense strategy to separate those cases. Somebody on Twitter,
they're going to say he's gone native or something.
So, when I tweeted from the courthouse, somebody tweeted me and said, "Yeah, the next move is going to be to have the trial moved to Palos Verdes."
Right, exactly. Right.
I had to laugh at that, but yeah,
change of venue.
A change of venue. So you got to put it in perspective, right? So we have the holidays coming up. Black people are traditionally holiday folks. I personally don't buy into all of that, but most of our people do. And so you have one family who is going to be spending their first Christmas without someone that they love. You have two families who have loved ones, young boys who are behind bars. And charged with a very serious crime. And then you have a third young man who is charged with the same crimes, but who we can already tell just from what's happened since he's been out on bail is going to have a fabulous holiday
He's going to Aspen probably. Sure.
That was one of the requests actually of the DA was for him to surrender his passport.
Did better.
But don't think he won't get ghost. Did not put that stipulation on Cameron Terrell.
How is he not a flight risk?
The judge asked the DA if he had any proof that Cameron Terrell was planning on leaving the country. And the DA made his argument. The judge did not accept it.
See, I've seen that happen with celebrities before. And I don't know if it was OJ or Mike Tyson or somebody. And maybe it was Robert Blake. Where it was somebody more famous, like Mike Tyson or somebody like that. And they said, hey, this defendant has the means to flee the country. And that's what the prosecution argued. And the defense says yes, but his face, he's so famous that he'll be noticed wherever he goes. And that was the kind of thing that allowed that person to get bail. But Cameron's got the money, but not the face. So
his family
has the means.
Money,
right. Yeah. They have the means to get him out of here. And we've seen it happen before.
Right.
Where that's happened.
With the affluenza situation.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
the exactly situation down in Orange County.
Yeah,
exactly. So now here's my question, though. And I always wondered this about gangsters who stood out from the rest of their crew or the rest of their set. Now, if you're the only white boy in the Crip gang, and something happens, and they say the suspect was described as a male white, they're going to come looking for you. Okay, we had a gang on the west side of L.A. in the Culver City area, and they had two white dudes in the gang. They were brothers. One of them actually was a shot caller. And I always wondered, how do you expect to have any anonymity? Because they say, well, somebody from this gang did that, but you don't know who from the gang did it. We know that it was you, his white Mike. We know that it was you. Okay, either you or your brother to go put in this work.
Or some very light complexion, African American, Latino
with blue eyes, right? So I always wondered about that. I knew a kid once who had a really bad case of vitiligo. And he was a little local gangbanger. And I said to him one day, everybody knows it's you. What you need to straighten up and fly right, because you're not going to be able to commit any crimes to get away with any crimes around here, because everybody knows your appearance is so distinctive that everybody automatically knows that it's you. And that's the same thing here. This kid pushing around South L.A. by the quick and split in a new Mercedes
Benz to begin with, right? You're young. You have a
drawing
new Mercedes
attention.
Benz. You're riding around with young teenagers in your car to begin with, right? So, yeah, obviously he stood out. I think, again, sometimes we have a habit of rationalizing things. He's 18.
Right.
His
brain's not fully
and the people
formed yet.
he's hanging out with are like between 13 and 18, right? Mm-hmm. So they're not thinking, because if they were thinking rationally, they wouldn't have done what it's alleged that they've done, right?
Absolutely.
And so they probably weren't even thinking about that. And I think as this case develops, in terms of Cameron Terrell, his prelim has been pushed to January 9th, like just after the new year.
Of course. Let him spend some time with his family for the holidays, why don't you?
Right. And so, I think it'll be really interesting to see what Javon Blacknell, who is the new attorney,
right,
what that strategy is going to look like. I'm almost 100% sure that the two juveniles have public defenders.
Yeah, probably.
And like I said, it's a tragic situation all the way around. And, to the average person, it doesn't seem fair. It does not seem fair that, Cameron Terrell is going to be free for the holidays, that Cameron Terrell, comes from a wealthy family and is going to enjoy the benefits and the perks of being from a wealthy family. And, a lot of people were saying, the bail thing, because, bail is a huge issue in the state of California.
Oh, my God. We had a show about that, and we went back and forth about that. If you look at it, it is clearly geared to benefit the wealthy and the state, of course. So, I mean, my God, we got to do something about that.
And we have a bail schedule, and, that which is part of the reason why that bail was $5.4 million.
Sure, because that's all kind of special circumstances on a murder, sure.
When I was sitting in court, now at criminal court, it's CCB, especially in arraignment court, it's like a zoo, pardon my, my example, but it's just a lot of stuff going on in there. Sure. It wasn't just a courtroom for that particular case.
Sure, it's a bunch of stuff on the docket, sure.
It's a lot, and they're going through the docket, and you got the sheriff's deputies telling everybody to pipe down and be quiet, and you hear $20,000 bail, $50,000 bail, and then when you hear the judge say, and bail will stand at 5.4. Everybody was kind of like,
God damn.
That's what I heard. I heard people
what he done did.
Right, because if they weren't paying attention, they started paying attention right when they heard that.
Right, because they probably figured, what is he in here for? He stole a car, got caught with weed or something, or whatever, got caught with something. And then you hear $5.4 million. I'm sure that's probably the highest bail all day.
Yeah. And for me...
And then he walks out. But here's the amazing part. The judge says $5.4 million and he walks out. Now think about that.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
He walks out the front door.
One of the things that I talked about regarding this case, and particularly Cameron Terrell, was the fact that, we have a lot of people in South LA who are working like every day in their neighborhoods to curb gang violence and to stop gang violence. You have people who are trying to move away from it, right?
Yeah,
and then you have someone who comes down from Palos Verdes,
where it doesn't even exist,
and engages it and brings it into our community. Like
he didn't take it back with him up there, though.
Exactly, and that is also very troubling. It's like, at the end of the day, you don't have the ghetto bird zooming over your neighborhood all night long.
All the time.
You don't hear random gunshots every day.
Absolutely.
And all of the stuff that you hear in some neighborhoods in South LA.
Yeah.
And, he
was a visitor. Basically.
Pretty much. And, these families, including Justin's family, they still live in that epicenter.
That's right. They're still there dealing with it.
They're still there. They still got to see the same people. In terms of the 2 juveniles, those folks got to see the same folks, from the quote unquote set, the same, people
Absolutely.
that, and so it's like I said, it's a tragic situation, but it's one that must be looked at, analyzed, and talked about. There was some criticism of, why are people making a big issue out of it now? People didn't know about it.
Right.
Until I think the Daily Breeze wrote about it. I don't think I didn't even know about it. No one knew about it. You have to understand, in LA, these cases come a dime. There are a lot
of gang murders, unfortunately.
when I sat in court myself, this week, before they got to Cameron Terrell, I must have sat through like 5 DV cases, domestic violence cases, right? And it was like a mental check to myself too, like, God, all these people are here for domestic violence issues. Shout out to my single folks. But these courtrooms are full of these kind of cases. And oftentimes we don't hear about them until there's some verdict. There's some...
if you hear about it then even.
If you hear about it then, exactly. Because it's very similar to the gang shootings. There are so many gang shootings in South LA that the news media is inundated with them. So they're not going to cover all of them.
Let me tell you something. I've been on the scene for hellacious police shootings that didn't make the news.
Right.
It just depends on what's going on that day.
It not only does it depend on what goes on that day, but it also depends on who's screaming and crying the loudest. Right. So when you have, families that make it a big issue, or they maybe get attached to one of these community organizations like, Black Lives Matter or Dignity and Power Now or whatnot, then that can also help. But this stuff happens so much. That it's hard. Right. So this case got, I think, when the shooting happened on October 1st, I didn't even know about it.
Well, yeah, because it's not newsworthy at that point. The only thing, honestly, and I hate to say it, what makes us newsworthy is Cameron Terrell. And that's why it's getting so much publicity. In some ways,
that's sad, but I think that journalists have a responsibility in reporting on this story to always remember that there's a victim, that there's someone dead.
Always,
we can't forget that. Like, so even when I did it was such a dance to do the piece that I ended up doing for the Sentinel, was because, I had to, definitely, talk about Justin Holmes. At that time, his family didn't want to talk, and I can definitely respect that. But then, you have these 2 parents of these 2 juveniles who also feel very strongly about the situation that their kids are in. And, and then you have Cameron Terrell. And like I said, it's all
whose family ain't talking to nobody.
No, they're not. But they should realize that this isn't going to go away. Like the interest in this case is not going to go away.
Case ain't going to go away till Cameron goes away. So,
and one thing that people who feel that Cameron Terrell is guilty can rest assured of is that if he was a part of, the Rolling 90s, if he, was a full-fledged member, when he goes to prison, he will find out that's not going to carry him very far.
Well, let's see now, because so the conversation I had with one of my white gangsters out in the field, I asked him, I said, man, so one day I'm going to catch you. One day I'm going to send you to the penitentiary. And what are you going to do? Because you can't roll with the Aryans. They're not going to accept you because they're not going to accept you. What are you going to do? Because prison, and he said, you know what?
You think you're going to hang with the Black Gorilla family
what he said, what he told me was he had no doubt in his mind that he was going to be in the car with the Crips because this is Crip till the casket drop.
Oh, wow.
That's exact words. And I said, okay. And I don't know enough about prison politics and the dynamic of prison, but I can't imagine that the Crips would not look out for him if he's been out there. And the guy I was talking about he's a shot caller in his little gang. I can't imagine that they would just leave him to, abandon if he was the position he held in that gang. Now, I don't know about Cameron. Cameron may not be juiced up like that. Cameron might end up, in protective custody.
I don't think Cameron has what it takes.
Yeah, he may not have that kind of juice for them to be worried about it.
Trying to separate himself.
Well, that's true. He is, isn't he? This is true.
And try to act like he was maybe forced into it.
Right. Those guys had guns. I didn't know what they were going to do.
Force him to hang. And like one of the young men that I spoke to, over at Jesse Owens Park, didn't nobody force him? Like, he came around there showing off his car and hanging out.
Trying to hang out, trying to be down.
And wanting to be down. And there's some talk about whether or not he was financing these rap videos.
Well, I was going to say that. Yeah, him coming out with the money, he had to be contributing something more than just drive around in a flashy car. He had to be the one buying all the weed or whatever was happening, right?
Right. And there was a couple of comments on Facebook that, he looks like he's got some black in him. Well, you know what? Yet. The question
Wait till he go to prison.
Asked to one of his attorney representatives, and they said he was white.
Well, if you look at his pictures, I can see somebody thinking
lighting. That. I think it's the lighting and the angle.
And he probably picked those pictures to put on Facebook because that represents how he sees himself. But you know what?
They have a lot of apps, too, that let you, plump up your lips and stuff. And so you just never know. When he came into court, he looked like a white boy to me. When he,
because he is.
He did. I almost didn't recognize him at first because he had the white boy hair thing going on. Did he have the pierced ear still? I didn't look that closely. But yeah. So I think it's the judge put a couple of restrictions on him about
stay up in Palos Verdes there,
what was
Cameron.
The restrictions? The regular restrictions about not hanging around bad people.
Don't hang out with gang members and you can't get in any trouble and don't consume alcohol, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, he shouldn't be consuming alcohol anyway.
At 18, but still, it's a special condition if he does, Well, listen, we got to continue to follow this because this is going to be it's going to be interesting. And, like I said, he may have more black in him than he wants when he goes to prison. But
he may be going to jail jail right now.
Oh, they revoke his bail.
If they do the special circumstances.
Right, and then he's going to the penitentiary if he gets convicted. So, and there's no getting out of that. There's no rich section in jail unless you PC
sure?
up. If you PC up,
I know
maybe.
In Orange I guess you're correct. Because I know in Orange County, though, they had the rich section for the jail. Well, that's
Orange County jail, maybe. And also, now in the county system, if you can pay, you can do your time in a local city jail. So you can go to a nice little city jail someplace.
Like Beverly Hills.
And pay, right. You can do your time in Beverly Hills jail. If you have enough money, you can pay the city of Beverly Hills to do your time there. And your people can come visit you and it's very nice and all that.
You cannot do that with prison.
Can't do it in the state pen system. Yeah. So that's that. Well, hey, if he did it, shame on him. He's gonna have to roll with it. So I don't want to miss out on an opportunity to talk about this case that is also an old case, so old that the person's already been convicted, but through the wonders of social media, it has come to attention of multiple celebrities, etc. And now we have this new cause. Is it Celebrate or Cause Celebrate? The Cyntoia Brown case, and some of you may have heard about Cyntoia Brown case. Cyntoia Brown was a victim of a child victim of sex trafficking who was forced into prostitution at a young age and ended up killing someone who had paid to have sex with her, apparently, and was sentenced to basically almost the rest of her life. I think she'll be 69 years old when she's eligible to be released from prison. And this is an old case. In fact, the documentary they made about it is old. And if you look at her now, she's a full-grown woman. And if you look at the initial videos when she was arrested or whatever, she's a kid. Now she's obviously a full-grown woman. But a lot of celebrities picked up on this case, and now it's gaining momentum. So we're going to show a quick video and then come back and talk about that.
You've missed all of your teenage life. I would like you to have some kind of an adult life. Well, I think about that every day. What? I know you did. I know you did. I know you did.
Cyntoia is a complex child. She is the little girl that everyone would love to have.
This is a kid who had some horrible life experiences. Many, many bad things happened to her, and it wasn't just an isolated bad thing, but it was a pattern of bad things. She allowed herself to get involved with one more bad situation.
Why would you throw me away for the rest of my life? Why? I don't understand that.
But if you ask me tomorrow, I'll say the same thing. I am ready for love.
We have a good relationship. I don't understand why she felt that she couldn't come to me, no matter what it was.
I didn't want people to know I was done, so I didn't say anything.
But I don't think because you couldn't make a bottle, that's why Toya has turned out such as she has.
That's a start right there. If you can't feed them, how the hell can you raise them?
It's not only hurting a baby, you're hurting whoever that baby hurts when it turns into the terror that it's going to turn into.
So that gives you a little, intro into what we're going to talk about. So keep in mind that when this case happened like 10 years ago, there was no one talking about victims of sex trafficking. They were not. We weren't on this thing that we're on now, where we finally are paying attention to child sex slaves and children being exploited. You know, this is like the early days of Dateline, et cetera, you know. So she was not viewed at that time as being someone who had been manipulated by a pimp, cutthroat of all names he calls himself. And apparently he sent her out to go engage in this life of prostitution. And so this guy picks her up and they go to the hotel or his hotel room. Or I don't know if it might have been his house because he had guns there. And apparently he showed her his gun collection, etc. And she says that she became afraid, and so she shot him and fled. Okay, and that's the story that everybody's putting out there, that, hey, you know, she had been held captive by this guy, and he was having his way with her, and then she saw her chance, and she had to kill him to get away. And that's what everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon about. But if you look at the case, really, it looks more like, honestly, it was a robbery. And that the motive may have been robbery all along. And during the course of that robbery, for whatever reason, she decided to shoot him and kill him. Now, apparently he was shot in the back of the head while he was in sleep, right? Kind of sleeping position, it appears. And there was no evidence to back up her side of the story that he had done something to scare her, and she grabbed one of his guns and shot him. And it didn't help that she then fled with his money and his truck.
Right.
Okay? So that's the part nobody's talking about. However, the flip side of that also is that you're still talking about a 16-year-old who had a very rough life, who was lured or forced into this life of prostitution by this pimp, and who made some bad decisions. Now, again, back then, there was no sympathy on the part of a jury, especially in Tennessee, with a black prostitute who was portrayed as like a hardcore prostitute who has set up to rob and kill this trick, or this John, this customer, whatever you want to call him, who was a white guy. So she got a whole lot of time for that. All right, if you're 16 when you get convicted and you ain't getting out till you're 69, you know that's quite a bit of time, right? That's a half a century basically that she got. But the fact of the matter is that the man was still killed, still murdered or whatever. And it's interesting to see people saying, "Hey, this is an outrage. Let's get behind this and let's get our, like, I guess Kim Kardashian is having her legal team look into what can be done." And again, I say if this case happened today, she probably wouldn't have gotten 53 years or whatever the hell she got. You look like you want to say something.
I don't do Kim Kardashian on any level.
even for something like this, where she's trying to use her powers for good for once.
On any level, not any of them. But
well, it's not just Kim Kardashian. LeBron James is involved.
No, Rihanna.
Rihanna's involved, et cetera, et cetera.
I totally get it. I know that there were some reports also that this young lady had either it was fetal alcohol syndrome.
Right. Because she was giving up. So the lady you saw in the video talking about being able to make a bottle, I believe that was her birth mother, and the white woman was her birth mother, and the other lady who said we had a great relationship with the black woman is her foster mother.
Yeah,
but she had been with her forever. But apparently, yes, they're saying that she had fetal alcohol syndrome, which is one of those things that impairs your judgment and your ability to develop, et cetera, et cetera. And that's well and good.
We got a lot of those folks walking around.
Well, that and crack babies, et cetera.
I was just about to say that. So, and the damage is real.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The damage you can see every single day in certain parts of this community, outside, walking around. You know, so I absolutely agree with you that if this were had it happened today in court today, that she probably would not have received the hefty sentence that she received. I think that given the fact that all of these celebrities and there's all this social media attention, because remember, also 10 years ago, social media wasn't what it is today.
Not at all.
Right. So, that helps a lot.
And I'm sure she's like, well, hell, I've been sitting here for 10 years. Where y'all been?
Right.
But it
is what it is. I mean, one of the things that I can say about, our streaming services like Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and stuff is that you get to have these documentaries and these different stories.
Different outlets. You don't have to make it to PBS now to get your story told.
Or have cable. Right.
Right. Absolutely.
So, you open it up to a wider audience. And so I don't think she's going to be the last story like this that we hear about.
You mean in terms of people going to find these cases and then like maybe trying to find some justice or a sense of modern justice for these people?
Right. And I really don't know legally what can be done at this point.
She's sentenced. Now, you know what? Here's the thing people said, though. Like you said, this is not the last of those cases. But even if it changes those laws or if somebody puts in motion things that will change those laws that may help someone else who actually maybe is a little bit more of a perfect victim, if there's such a thing, then maybe that's the good that will come of this. But, and again, I'm not trying to down her or put any put an undue amount of blame on her.
You don't seem very sympathetic.
Well, I'm not. I'm not very sympathetic because the fact of the matter is you still shot somebody in the head while they were sleeping, took their wallet, took their gun, took their car, and took off. Okay? So that, to me, is, the reasons why you may have done that or why you may have felt that was your only option or whatever. Sure, let's talk about that. But the fact of the matter is the dude is dead. Now it's a 43-year-old pedophile who was having sex with a 16-year-old. Okay? I don't know what the age of consent is in Tennessee. It's probably not 18 being
you think
Tennessee.
It's 13 or something?
You know what? It's probably 16. It's probably 16 because Tennessee borders Mississippi, which borders Alabama, which is where Roy Moore is, getting ready to be elected. So I think it's probably 16, but still. So I try not to put my California West Coast cosmopolitan standards on what these bumpkins do. But even in Tennessee, a 43-year-old man and a 16-year-old girl is still untoward. Okay?
I absolutely agree. When I posted this story on Facebook, I think it was this week or last week, one of the things that I said was this is part of the reason why we work so hard to get immunity for Ed Buck's victims.
Yep.
Because what can happen, and people didn't understand this, is that you may go in as a witness trying to explain what happened to you.
Right.
And in the process, you have to admit to all of these crimes.
All the stuff you did, sure.
Like, maybe he picked you up. Maybe, there's some solicitation there.
Right.
Maybe there was some drug use.
Sure.
And people don't understand that technically you still can get charged with a crime.
Especially with that felony. You're sitting under oath admitting to felonies, sure.
Right. Even though you're in there trying to do the right thing.
Right. You
and
so
there are all these levels of complexity when it comes to our legal system. And you're absolutely right. From state to state, it differs. And sometimes in California, we just look at things through our, super liberal lens. Because whether or not we're liberal personally, our state clearly is.
Right, absolutely.
Right? And we didn't even get to talk about the San Francisco trial of Kate.
Kate Steinle and the dude. Yeah, right. The outcome of that, sure.
But, yeah. it's a tragic situation. If there is a way for her to maybe get out.
Well, get out one day. I don't think you've done enough time yet, but maybe not when you're 69 years old. Because she said, why would you throw me away for the rest of my life?
And people, these are the things I think about, which is why I try not to break the law and go to prison. She was 16, and think about what kind of world she would be coming out into at 69, 70 years old.
Oh, my God.
Right?
There'll be flying cars
we're gonna have surrogate bodies. Like we won't. We're probably. You saw that movie with Bruce Willis, did you? Where you get to have the perfect body while your old body sits at home.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh, you guys should see that movie. Okay. And they'll probably be robots and flying cars.
There'll be flying cars for sure. But we've been saying that forever.
Yeah. So it's it's going to be a completely different world. I mean, I'm glad that that her situation is getting attention for the reasons that you mentioned in particular, because if it can stop someone else from getting a sentence like that, or for extenuating circumstances to not be taken into consideration.
Right. Now, that's the thing, is those extenuating, because there's people who've gone into, who've killed people who don't get that much time, who were adults when they killed somebody who was minding their own business and don't get that much time. So I am sympathetic to the fact that she was a juvenile and had just been, basically, in my California mind, sexually abused by this person. I'm willing to take all that into consideration, and I think 53 years is a long ass time when there's other people in that state getting less time. Okay, but keep in mind where it is. Keep in mind who she is, who the guy was, and when it was.
Tennessee's a death penalty state, isn't it?
Yeah, but no death penalty because of her age. At the time, they couldn't give her the death penalty. Right.
I'm shocked and surprised.
I know, right?
Right.
You would think they give them the death penalty in Tennessee. Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm pretty sure it's a death penalty state. And I got some family and friends down there, et cetera, some of whom are in law enforcement and some of whom are not. It's a different vibe when you go down there. When I go down there to visit them.
It's a different vibe the minute I get off the plane anywhere in the South.
Yeah. Sure.
I immediately realized I am not in L.A. anymore.
You know what? Even a place that's relatively...
even Atlanta.
Well, yeah, Atlanta. I just came back from New Orleans. In New Orleans, you still know that you're in the South.
Yeah, I was in New Orleans last year speaking at... I can't remember. That's so horrible. I can't...
Because it's still Louisiana.
I was at LMU.
Don't forget, it's still Louisiana.
I was at LMU speaking, and this was right before President Trump became president, and he had just been there speaking, and they were abuzz about Donald Trump, and I was like, and my Uber driver was just Donald Trump, there's Donald Trump, that, and I was like, oh Lord have mercy, I am definitely in the.
I was in Florida. I was in Florida the night he won, in the Everglades. So you can imagine.
Even the alligators were depressed.
No, I'm sure they were, man. They probably said, just turn me into some shoes. Get me out of here. Listen. So we're going to... listen. How can people follow you?
I don't want to be followed.
I don't mean physically follow you.
I don't want any stalkers.
But how can they keep abreast of your social media efforts? And keep up with the Jamel Moore case.
Well, the Jamel Moore case,
the home case.
You just have to go to Justice, the number 4, and then Jamel GEMMEL.com. And then me, I'm at Jasmyne on Twitter. And
it's Jasmyne with a Y.
JASMYNE, and Jasmyne Cannick on Facebook. Don't try to add me on my personal page. I got 5,000 people. You have to do the fan page, popular, the public page.
Be a public figure,
it's not. Wow. I wish actually Facebook would do away with that restriction, but they won't. So.
I'm sure they. I don't know what the deal is with that. But listen, you can like the Ride Along Radio Show on Facebook. Or not, right? For what, right? I used to get a lot of comments here on YouTube. Seems like more people are commenting on Facebook, and that's fine because either way, I'll address the comments.
You gotta know your audience. Know your audience.
I think that a lot of people come to watch it later through the link on Facebook, and that's what it is, right? And now we're doing the live view, so some people are watching it there. So like us on Facebook, Ride Along Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram at Ride Along Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at just Ride Along Radio. If you've got a topic that you want to talk about, you can send us an email at ridealongradioshow@gmail.com. We're going to be back.
I got a topic.
What do you got?
I want to talk about black on black crime.
Well, some people say that's... well, let's talk about that, but we'll talk about it another time because that's 3 hours right there.
I got
some thoughts about that one, believe me.
Me too.
We'll be back next Thursday, which is November 7th, and I've actually...
December 7th.
December. My God, thank you. December 7th, and I've got a pretty good guest on tap that I don't want to bust it out yet till they confirmed, but it's going to be a big deal. So stay tuned, and we'll let you know about it. Who?
Chief Beck is coming on your show?
No, this person's far more controversial. All right, so we'll see you guys next week on the Ride Along Radio Show. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining Jasmine.